So the oral cavity, you see this area is called as vestibule, which is between the closed teeth and the cheek, or the lips and the closed teeth. Inside is called as the oral cavity proper. This is the lower jaw and the upper jaw teeth. Oral cavity proper, you can see in the floor the tongue. This is tongue. Tongue has intrinsic muscles, 3 of them, oblique, circular, longitudinal, and there are extrinsic muscle. One that you can see here is genioglossus. The others are also visible, but in different views. Below the tongue are lying the 2 glands, sublingual salivary glands in the floor of the mouth. These are sublingual salivary glands in the floor of the mouth. The roof of the oral cavity is made, here you can only see the hard palate. Okay, here you can only see the hard palate. In this another picture, you can see again the oral cavity proper. This is the floor made by the tongue, the muscles of the tongue. Here in the roof, you can see the hard palate plus the soft palate behind. Okay, soft palate. Together they make the roof of the oral cavity. The teeth are for the purpose of grinding and chewing. The tongue is helping in moving the bolus or the food that we eat from one side of the teeth to the other side and then ultimately to the back. This hole is pharynx. Now we are concerned with the oropharynx only. The oropharynx means the pharyngeal part which is lying behind the oral cavity. Here the food will go. At this time, this epiglottis closes the larynx and the trachea. It closes. And the food travels from the oropharynx to the laryngopharynx and to the esophagus. Okay, this is how it is done. So we have oropharynx, which shows here the palatine tonsils. Below the tongue at the back, there are lingual tonsils. We can see the laryngopharynx and the esophagus beginning in this picture or in this model also. Here are the sublingual glands. We have a mylohyoid, there is a muscle, and below the muscle you can see these glands, which is below the mandible on both sides, submandibular glands. So 2 of the salivary glands are clearly visible in this model. The tongue, the muscles of the tongue, the oral cavity as a whole is visible. Okay. Details you are already taking in the lecture. Details are not required. Here you need to know or identify the structures. We start from here. In front of the auricle, you see the salivary gland. This one, salivary glands, as we started in the beginning of the GIT, are one of the supporting glands. This is the largest salivary gland, that is called as parotid gland. We can see a duct coming from the parotid gland to inside, open in the vestibule of the oral cavity. This is called as parotid duct. Again important, your MCQ question or maybe your practical exam question. So we can see the other 2 salivary glands here. The one which is below the mandible is submandibular. You have also seen in the other model. And the one below the tongue is sublingual. Okay. These 2 open in the floor of the mouth, while the parotid gland opens in the vestibule of the mouth. Okay. Then we can see the hard palate in the roof and the tongue in the floor of the oral cavity. From here, what we can see as we go down, behind the trachea lies the esophagus. Esophagus is between trachea and back is the vertebral column. So the trachea is in front, the vertebral column is behind, and in the middle is the esophagus, which is called as the food pipe also. Trachea is called as windpipe. Esophagus is called as food pipe. This esophagus doesn't have any cartilage or bone in it. This tube is only muscular tube. it remains collapsed like this, closed, when there is no food. When the food enters, it will become with a rounded lumen, open, okay, to give space and keep on propelling the food down. Esophagus will pierce or just go into this muscle. This is called as diaphragm. It will pierce the diaphragm, enter into the abdomen. Along with the esophagus, from this opening, the two nerves that I told you that supplies the stomach, left vagus and right vagus, will also enter from this opening. This esophagus will go and end by continuing with the stomach, and the left and right vagus nerve supply the stomach also. Okay. Then stomach, you can see, is the most dilated part of the GI tract. It is J-shape, lying on the right, in the left quadrant. The stomach is hidden behind the left lobe of the liver. If you remove the left lobe of the liver, you can see the whole stomach. And if you remove the stomach, you can see behind the stomach the pancreas and the spleen. Now this stomach has a cardiac end and a pyloric end. This whole is pyloric region with pyloric antrum, pyloric canal, and the pylorus, which is the opening. Okay. At the cardiac end, you see the esophagus is entering. There is a greater curve and there is a lesser curve. Lesser curve is on the right side, the greater curve is the left side. You can see the vessels running. These are the right and left gastric arteries coming from the celiac artery, from the abdominal aorta. This large one is abdominal aorta. This one coming out is celiac artery. It gives the branches. If you see the parts of the stomach, we have fundus and the body and pylorus. Okay. This end continue with the duodenum. If I open it, as I told you before, the mucosa is thrown into folds. And these folds are there to increase the size, okay, to increase the accommodation in the stomach. After the stomach comes the small intestine. The small intestine, you can see the duodenum. In the duodenum, there is second part, there is opening for the pancreatic duct. This is the white color. And behind we can see the green color bile duct is coming. Both are opening in the second part of the duodenum. This is the second part of the duodenum. This whole C-shaped is duodenum. Okay. The duodenum ends into jejunum and then ileum. The ileum and jejunum are second and third part of small intestine, very long. They are responsible for absorption, and the ileum end in the cecum. There is a valve-like structure which can close or allow the opening for the material to pass from small intestine to cecum. Is the first part of the large intestine. There are two things that are attached to cecum. One is ileum. The other is this part which we call as appendix. Appendix is attached to the cecum. Okay. And then we have the colon. The colon is the one going up, then running transversely, then going down, then S shape. So the one that is going up is ascending colon. This is large intestine. First part of large intestine was cecum. Second is colon, that is having many parts. Ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, and sigmoid colon. Then in the pelvis, you see the rectum and the anal canal. Okay. Water and electrolytes are absorbed from the large intestine. The rest of the absorption is done from the small intestine and the stomach and other places. Okay. This, what is attached to the large intestine is the peritoneum called mesocolon. And the part of the peritoneum attached to the small intestine is called mesentery. Okay? And we can see here the cut surface or the cut edge of the gastric peritoneum. That is the covering of the stomach. Gastric means stomach. Then coming to the accessory glands, we did pancreas and liver. So here you can see the spleen. This is pancreas. Spleen we have already done, I think, before, or no? Or we will do in the lymphatic system in detail. Pancreas having its head in the duodenal curve, then body, then the tail goes to the spleen. There is pancreatic duct which will secrete the pancreatic juice in the second part of the duodenum, while the some part, that is islets or B cells, they secrete the insulin directly into the bloodstream. So there are a lot of blood vessels. This pancreas is lying behind the peritoneum. I told you this is a retroperitoneal structure. There is no covering of the peritoneum on pancreas. Then this is one gland. The other gland that we see is liver. Liver is lying in the right hypocordon of the abdomen. The left lobe of the liver is smaller. Right lobe is bigger. Let's say you people like, what example? Okay, you have right and left shoulders. You have angels. You know this? What is those? What are their name? Karam and Katibin? Huh? That's what we call them. They write your, what do you want to be written? The left to be less, and the right one to be more at the day of judgment. Why? To go into the heaven. Oh, inshallah we will go, being a Muslim, but first we'll visit the hell, have a stamp, and then come back. But still, because many friends will be there, so meet them first, then come back to the heaven. Okay, so the one that we want to be more is right side, and what we want to be less is left side, because this one I will keep alone, not here fixed. You have to identify the left lobe and the right lobe for the practical purpose. Okay, the right lobe is larger, the left is the smaller. This structure is inferior vena cava, coming from here, going behind the liver, entering into the heart. Okay, and you can see just below the liver, you can see the gallbladder. This is green color is gallbladder. This stores the bile. The duct from the gallbladder and the liver, the hepatic duct and the cystic duct, they join to form the common bile duct which enters into the duodenum. Okay, so this much is enough for the purpose of practical. A little bit of the details and identification of the points. You should identify the salivary glands, the floor of mouth, tongue, the heart, palate, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, the different parts of the stomach, intestine, the different parts of the intestine, structure entering into duodenum, structure attached to the cecum, ascending, transfer, descending colon, and the pancreas, the duct of the pancreas, the liver, the lobe of the liver, and gallbladder. So like this much is needed for the practical purposes. Okay, this is all about the digestive system. Any question?